okay. And it's okay. In this mode of this visit, how I would talk to you if you were in my studio, and also how I'd talk to you and the conversation I'd like to have if we were in the gallery together. So some of the things this show did was it brought this great sense of community together. I was on the way to the opening and I realized I hadn't done any art events, as many of you haven't, since February. And being able to facilitate seeing art, let alone my stuff, but just being able to be at a gallery with other humans was really awesome and really impactful, really important. And we did it responsibly. We only have 6 people in the gallery at a time for the opening, and it was as safe as we could do it. I'm going to talk about process, materials, gathering items, and creating relationships. No artwork is made in a vacuum. I mean, even if you're just sitting and doing a drawing with paper and pencil, unless you made the paper yourself from a tree and you made the pencil yourself with lead, etc., you're involved with the relationships in one way or the other. And so we'll talk about that, especially for this show. I had to be very involved. 3D printing and 3D scanning. I'll talk about process. Some of you may have no understanding of it at all. Some may have a pretty good understanding of it. So I'm going to cover some basics and the pros and cons of the process and how it worked for me. And then manipulating materials, the conceptual roots of the show, breaking old patterns, which is something I'm focusing on in a big way for my overall life. Recognizing projections and taking hold of reflections. And so I'll explain that more as we kind of get into it. So here we go. There we go. So this is Kathy Greger Gallery. It is, like I said, in the Shaw neighborhood. It's got a killer sign outside. I love signage, but we're not here to talk about that. But before we go in there, I wanted to talk about where this show really kind of came from. And this is the studio visit element of this. Is that from 2006 to 2010, we got to go kind of backwards here. I lived in Kansas City, and I was a custom fabricator at this shop called 3 Axis. And this interest, I was trying to think about where this show really started from, and it really started here with the interest in technology and fabrication and building, and how that overlaps with making art and with being creative with tools, and how tools really can be anything. They can be manipulated into serving whatever you need them to serve. So at that job, I learned how to clamp things very well, how to learn how to do really random things with, this is styrofoam using fiberglass to make this tooth for a dentist's office, to make this giant set of teeth with this big fake floss thing. This was for a traveling exhibit for a museum for children. Making giant football helmets out of plywood and foam and fiberglass and steel, eventually look like this. This is in the Kansas City Chiefs football stadium. You can walk inside of it and play games and stuff. Made other ridiculous things, apparently just a lot of big goofy things, but it was really, really great. So this veterinary clinic wanted someplace to put the toilet paper, so we made this for them. And ridiculous things, again, giant stuff. So this is just a giant light switch for an electrical company, for them to turn the switch on and go, yay, whatever that public event might be. So let's see, oops, got stuff there. There we go. Later on, I lived in Las Vegas and was doing ridiculous projects like this, making giant sandcastles this is all out of foam. Same thing here, making photo ops for people to stand in front of a thing and that kind of thing. So in other words, I learned a lot doing a lot of really random things. And one of the biggest things I took from being a fabricator was learning some of this technology, let alone like traditional things, woodworking, plastic, welding, all that kind of stuff. But one of the big things was learning how to use this machine, a CNC machine, computer numeric control router. We have one at Webster. Some of you have used it. Some of you may have never even seen it because it's behind a closed door in Sculpture Lab. So basically what this machine can do is cut out anything within 0.0065 of accuracy, which is the thickness of a piece of paper. So it's extremely accurate. So I started using it to make these components, these industrial components, to make my own flip clocks. And so you saw it there cutting out parts, and this is beginning to assemble those parts. So I deconstructed an old flip clock from a thrift store, and then wanted to use it as a messaging system as opposed to a numeric system. And so you're kind of seeing the guts here, and then there's more flaps being added on there. And then this is the finished piece, which rotated on a 1 RPM motor, and it took 1 minute for it to spell out the word breathe. And so it would take, and it was actually surprisingly annoying because the flaps would fall down and make this kind of click clack sound. So it was meant to be this form of something more relaxing. At the same time, there's also something that's kind of catches your attention, is actually kind of frustrating, kind of annoying. But that's what my mom told me. This is for her as a gift. Not annoying, but it got her attention. Anyway, I went on and kind of blew up the idea and got even bigger. This is each of these reams has, I think, 14 panels. And so this one, you can imagine all of them click-clacking, falling down, and it spells out, just keep waiting, and this takes 1 minute to do. I put this in here because it's relevant to the whole idea of waiting. This is from 2007. So I'm using that technology, I'm playing with it as an artist, and then eventually get here to Webster in 2013. And as soon as I got here, there were 3D printers waiting for me. I'd never used 3D printers before. I'd never done any computer modeling besides one class in high school, and that was a long time ago. It was almost, 15 years before getting to Webster. So I had a lot of catching up to do. So I'm going to jump a little bit forward to where we are kind of now. Is that for 3 years I was playing with 3D printing and playing 3D scanning, but there's been a big jump. And if you have an iPhone 10 or newer, there's the front-facing scanner that allows it to do facial recognition, which is how it tells who you are versus someone else. It's basically a laser shooting at your face that is gauging the depth of the topography of your face. So this is basically what it sees when it sees you, and how it tells you from somebody else. And different programs you can see between these 3 different images. These are 3 different programs that you can get, or apps that will allow you to scan things and then put them in the computer. So because the scanner is only front facing, I first playing with it can only do basically selfies. And by the way, you're going to see a whole lot of me in this presentation because I'm the cheapest and most available model that I know. And most amenable. So there's a lot of me in here. But anyway, so this is the first print off of that, and experimenting with what the scanner can do. I started experimenting with expanding foam, squirting it into the head. The head is hollow, and then the expanding foam came out and made this weird kind of cloud, kind of thought bubble energy kind of thing. I was really into the gesture. I love that I couldn't control it, that kind of thing. But I didn't quite know what to do with this. The show waiting room that's open now was coming up, but I wasn't solid on the concept yet. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet, though I had the title. So in between experimenting with material and process with the scans, I was looking at a lot of references because I knew I wanted to jump into making full-size figures. It'd be a first for me. I've done a lot of figurative work now, but I haven't done any full-size figures. They've always been body parts, so legs or hands or just a portion of the body. So some of the references I was looking at were neoclassical sculpture. This is a period from the 1750s through basically the end of the 19th century. And basically it was a renewed interest in Greek and Roman style after they excavated Pompeii. They were like, oh, wait a minute, Greek and Roman stuff is really cool. We should make more of that. And so they started doing it. Well, what I'm really interested in is the term verism, which basically means warts and all. It's the Roman term of saying, don't make things that are flattering, make things that are real, or make things that are true to life. And I like that a lot. Also being lucky enough to teach in Vienna, there's neoclassical sculpture all over the place. And so I've been seeing it for several years now, having taught there in the summer repeatedly. So it's been really nice. It's been around me. It's not just totally random. Also, I happen to look like this guy with a mustache, but we're not related, I promise. Anyway, so other influences, George Siegel. George Siegel's really known for his process of using plaster bandages to replicate figures and put them into various scenarios where they're interacting with one another, or pointing out this idea of isolation or distance or connection. If you're not familiar with his work, it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. Bruce Nauman. Bruce Nauman is all over the map, and he can be a very challenging artist. At the same time, I really love his work. I love the idea of what a portrait can be or what a figure can be, and the chaotic and extremely organized way that he materializes his subject. So for example, like looking at the ones on the right there, all these taxidermy figures in this stand here, or this installation, how orderly they are compared to these almost random heads hung with bare wire and that kind of thing. So it's very raw, and I really, really like that. Let's go. Here we go. Kiki Smith, also tons of figurative work, lots of bronze casting. She's all over the place, but the surreal nature of her work really gets me. I really love her stuff. David Altman is a Canadian artist. He holds nothing back. He gets wild. I love his use of structure and this just playing with the figure, just having fun. And I don't know how to say the last name, but I think it's Sun and Ping. So this is a Chinese duo, and they make these really intense installations where you have these kind of impossible figures, but very casually going about their day. And lastly, Urs Fischer. Urs Fischer is a German artist, and I believe he's German, I'm pretty sure. And he's done all kinds of work, but I've really drawn these wax figures. So these are all entirely made of wax. Everything you see here is made of wax. And so throughout the show, everything is burned. So eventually you get this figure on the right, it just degrades into a pile of mush. So whenever you come in and see the show, you're only going to see that moment. You come in 10 minutes later, it's not the same moment anymore. And I love that idea of something evolving or changing. So anyway, that's some things I was looking at and thinking about a lot. Back to kind of talking about scanning and process. So this is a device that I became aware of thinking about how to start scanning stuff, not just with selfies, but how to do it so I can scan things in front of me. And this company made this this little clip-on thing that you can put on your phone, and as you can see on the right-hand side there's a mirror, and so the laser that's coming out to scan your face hits the mirror and then bounces forward at a 90-degree angle, or 45, I should say. And so, no, 90. Anyway, a 90-degree angle, and so you can scan things in front of you like this little cactus. So that's how they're able to scan the cactus. Of course, people on the internet are really smart and are really thrifty, and so you can see they're selling it for $54. The one on the right, somebody else designed it, and I just downloaded it and printed it for free, and then put a little mirror in there, and so didn't spend that money. Of course, I already had a 3D printer, but that's, if you have a 3D printer, there you go. But there's that. So what that did is that really opened it up. I could stop scanning just myself, or easy things to do. I could start scanning other people. I could scan body parts. The one on the far left there is my friend Kurt, and being able to scan, just seeing how far I could push it, how much memory it would have, how much it can really handle, and then moving up in quality and trying new things. So that's all. Scanning is great and everything. At the same time, like, it has to be usable. So this is the digital version. I basically cut off his head of that larger model and put it into the computer and started to use this program called Mesh Mixer that attempts to repair the model and attempts to patch it up. And 3D printing is basically like here he is with this tiny head. 3D printing is basically like making a balloon. In other words, a scan is like a very thin membrane, and for it to be something that you can actually print out, it has to be watertight. So imagine if you got a water balloon and cut it in half and then laid it out, it'd be a very flat surface. It's super thin. You can't do much with it. But if you have it round and it's complete and you fill it with water, then it becomes a full-size object. So it's the same thing. So at some point I'll be playing with these. These weird lumpy things are the computer's attempt to fix these, and they're not the way I wanted it to do it, but at some point I'll play with these because I really like what they do, but not of my interest for this particular show. Also too, real quick, talking about quality. So on the right-hand side, this is the first print I showed you with a head in the chair. This was lower settings on the scan and lower settings on the printer. And then the left one is the highest settings on the scanner and highest settings on the printer. So you get some pretty definitely some different results here, just in quality. But the problem with going up into higher quality is that the scanner doesn't know what to do with really difficult surfaces like hair. Hair is really challenging because it's wispy and there's tons of it. So it has a hard time. So it started making these models where I'd be missing the entire back of the person's head. And it's just gone. And I can't stitch it together with more hair or something. I guess I could, but it would be very, very difficult. Again, higher quality means more problems. So in that program, in Mesh Mixer, every one of these little balls and the needle thing is pointing out a problem in the model. It says, hey, pay attention to this. These are terrible. This is not going to work. So computing power from, as far as like this project goes, this was about 2 months, about a month and a half almost of just raw working through things in the computer. For example, like this set of arms, getting it from the scan to putting it in the computer to make it printable was probably about 10 hours of staring at the computer, letting it work through things, letting it try to cut the model up. This is the back side of it. And this is what I'm talking about making it watertight. So I had to seal up the whole thing and make it into a solid object so they could then trim it and make it into a, this is where the computer trying to slice it and giving a preview of that. And plus it just looks like a weird like 80s like music video or something, just like it's weird. Anyway, so yeah, so the goal was to get to what you see here, which is like that green line. This green line here is 4 millimeters thick. And this was the trick that I had to learn to be able to make these sculptures, was to make them hollow and at the same time have them have two skins and make them printable. So you get something like this on the outside, but at the inside it looks like this. So it's this very distorted, strange thing. But I wanted it this way so it'd be faster to print, it'd be more lightweight, and it would be, I could play with it more, I could do more with it. So talking about relationships, is that we're in a pandemic. Me being able to hang out with anybody besides my immediate family or anything like that is a challenge. Some people aren't comfortable with that. So being able to get people that trust me to come over and be relatively close to them to scan them, because I had to be within a few inches, less than a foot away from them, was a challenge. So these are reference photos from a scan that I took, and you'll see that little kid on the right hand side there. He's talking to Grover on the phone, but you'll see him later. Anyway. Oh, there he is right there, actually. So this is, again, like working with the models, trying to work these problems out. These are some process pics of going through and seeing how the computer renders various points of this process. I don't even think about them anymore. I just kind of breeze through them, but some of them are pretty surreal, pretty strange. And what you see here, this box here that we're looking at from the top view, this is the bounds of the printer, of what it's the maximum area it can print. And so like this black tab here, and you can see it in this different view down here, that's going to have to get cut off. And so same thing with the back of her head here, her hair is extending past the border of the printer, which number one leads to some really interesting visuals of like using these panels to slice. At the same time, it also leads to some really interesting possibilities of abstracting the figure or removing parts. So after it's been messed around with in that way, it gets put into what's called a slicer. And this is a slicer. A slicer is what communicates between the model that we have here, the yellow model, and the 3D printer itself. So basically what it's doing here is it's going through and saying, okay, if I'm going to build this thing one layer at a time, how am I going to do that, and how can I do it effectively? So she's being printed upside down. What you're looking at is this is the bed of the printer, the 3D printer, and then this blue box here is showing the boundary of the maximum it could possibly do. So if it goes outside those blue areas, it can't print it. Which is good because it gives me restrictions to work within. So I should say she was printed upside down because her hair is going upwards, and the printer would have just squirted plastic into nowhere. If her hair was falling downwards like this, it just would have gone nowhere. So she was printed upside down, so she had stalagmites instead of stalactites. So same thing here, making her fit in the print bed. And then here's Roald's head. Same thing, being sliced off because it wouldn't fit otherwise. And you can see down here in the lower right, this was a day and 17 hours to print his head. Most of his head took between 2, sometimes almost 3 days to print, just for the head. So what I had to do, one of the amazing things about being an academic is to be able to have resources. So I commandeered all of our school's printers and made a print, what this is called a print farm. Is when you have multiple 3D printers running at once. So at one point I had all 4 of these running, making parts. If you don't know how a 3D printer works, or if you've never seen one by chance, really brief intro, that's what they look like. This is the extruder motor. So basically filament, which is plastic, gets shoved through here. It looks like this, and it gets melted at the tip like that, and it gets shoved through this nozzle right here into little bitty strands. And it moves around, and it builds it as you want it to be built. So let's see if I can play this a little bit work. So to give you kind of an idea, so there's a spool of filament. It's going into the extruder there. It's going to come up and over. Excuse me. And it's going up to the print head where it's melting it, and then line by tiny line going through and building building the thing. So right now it's doing what's called, this is literally the heel of a foot. So it's literally doing the footprint, but it's literally, that's what it's called as well. It's making the footprint of the sculpture or of the item. Same thing here. This print was probably a 28-hour print or so. More filament. To give you an idea of cost too, that's a question that always comes up, is how expensive is filament? Like those are giant spools. Those are like, I want to say $45 for a giant spool. That's pretty cheap. You could make a lot of stuff with that. It looks like it's broken and crazy, but it's not. It's a part I just don't care about. So that's why it's all stringy. I let it kind of fall down. And same thing here. And you kind of get a better idea of what it's doing, building layer by layer and mark by mark. Things can also go really wrong. So this was a filament jam, and this is a ton of, it's not a marshmallow, that is a ton of melted plastic shoved into the nozzle and hardened around it. So that was fun to get off. This one says print finished. You can take the print off the print bed now. This was not what I wanted. So failure is very real and happens a lot. Well, not a lot, it does happen. And sometimes preventable, sometimes luck of the draw. So yeah. So to give you some, again, some things make more sense to print in certain directions. So this happens to be Emily's head being printed upside down. She was kind enough to be model for this show. Same thing here. These are our little boy's feet. Scaling is a real issue. I printed this kid's head, and it was way too small, and I had to go back and blow it up. And later on, I found a trick to get around that. But so sometimes a print is wasted because I messed it up. So things started building up. This is the first three figures, and you can see parts are in chunks. Like the feet are in two sections because it's more efficient to print them in two pieces. Same thing here. These hands are in two pieces, etc. So then there are more prints, more heads, more body parts, and then this was the totality of the almost 2 months worth of almost 24-hour printing. You can leave a printer running overnight, that kind of thing. So I would go to sleep and hear like machines in my basement working. So, and cross my fingers, I get up and it wasn't a pile of mess, but there's that. And this is a little tour of some of these parts as they are straight off the printer. So they still have their kind of footprint on the bottom of them. This is them pre-assembled as well. The quality on these is, it's good. It's not, well, it's good. It's not great. It's not the best they can do, but there's some sacrifice there for speed. So this is before anything's assembled, but you can kind of get an idea of the amount of printing. Like just for example, like this, the front toe of these shoes here, for example, is about a 17-hour print. And so that's only for one toe for one person. So I made 7 full-size figures, and that's a lot of printing. And yeah, I've never done this much, and I've never pushed machines this hard for this long. And it was a really good experiment in patience and trusting the machines to do what they need to do. But a big question too is that I've been asked is, why do all this printing? Because this could be achievable with casting. Because I could use alginate or plaster or something and get someone's hands or their feet and that kind of thing. And the answer is that that's not really I don't think it's very viable right now in our circumstance, socially and health-wise. It's also time consuming. I can scan somebody within less than 5 minutes or just a few minutes, whereas it would take hours to cast them in person. And then I can manipulate them, I can manipulate the model and the scan to do what I want it to do. So this is beginning to get things together, taking out the flashing, taking out the footprints, that kind of thing, and eventually getting to here. So the next step was my goal was to make these figures full scale, and to give them an armature to hold where all their body parts belong. So for example, if my hand is up like this, then I want my hand to be where it's supposed to be in space, but I didn't want to make an armature that reflected the body. I wanted it to be something totally different. And I love woodworking. I have a passion for joinery and that kind of thing. So I really wanted some really nice wood. This is walnut. And my good friend, Jim, he has a homestead out in Herman. And I told him I needed some nice wood. And he was like, yeah, come out, it's great. I'll give you as much as you want. So I didn't, so the wood is over here that he gave me. but this is the only documentation I have of it. So I'll just show you what I documented instead of the wood. Yeah. So that caught my attention. Anyway, so I get this walnut. I love working with walnut. We started pouring concrete in the feet because we need something to counterbalance these figures so they can actually stand up. So patched up the holes in the feet and then used painter's tape and then poured concrete inside. So each foot was nice and heavy. So and then start pairing up everyone's shoes and that kind of thing. And then to actually start building the figures, I basically hung their body parts where they belong, and then started from the ankles and worked my way up. So going piece by piece and screwing each piece where it goes and cutting custom pieces, and also trying to, again, not replicate the body as much as I could. So it made for some weird like joinery, like this weird like backward knee flamingo looking leg thing. And so here's the first one, it's not finished. This is before the foam goes on. You'll see the foam here in a minute. And then things start rolling, start working on multiple figures at once. Some of the joinery here, like taking, trimming out an angle here, trimming out an angle here. It doesn't look like much, but if you're into woodworking, it's some really fun stuff to geek out on. And there's two of them working together, or not working together, but part of it is like finding a form that works with this figure at the same time as also working in a different way than just what you might expect. So because this model's feet were together, just saying, oh, okay, well, she can have a singular body structure that goes up and around as opposed to something more recognizable. Then they moved over and started getting foam. I wanted to use foam kind of like in that first sketch I showed you, and I'll talk more about that here in a minute. Again, process, and then having fun with the process, getting kind of creepy. Multiple figures going on at once. Okay, now we're at the show. So you go on the show is set up is split into two areas. So we walk in the front here, and this is the main gallery where we have, this is the installation called Waiting Room. If you move left, then we have a secondary gallery, which we're gonna start there first. And so this gallery is full of small sculptures, tiny sculptures, prototypes, and what I'm calling projections. And I'll talk about that more here in a minute. I'm not going to go through this in detail because we don't have a ton of time. You can go to the show, or you can see more on my website. This is the oldest piece. This is self-titled from 2014. And all of these are either sculptures that I wanted to make in full scale, and I either didn't have the resources or the space or the time or fill in the blank, but making a small version, like making a sketch, was able to scratch the itch enough to where I could manifest it, I could see it, I could document it, and then move on to another project, as opposed to holding space for something that, or pining for something and then not actually being able to do it, and then not letting another idea come in the meantime. Same thing here. So this one, I should give you some kind of sense of scale too. These are all very small. This is like 3.5 inches tall. Is probably the dirtiest penny I could find, but for scale, you can see there how big he is. And I really enjoy doing things like painting shoelaces, apparently. So what I'm pointing out is, and what I want to kind of share is that it's okay to like tons of things and to geek out on all of them. It's fantastic. I fully support it. So these are architectural models. These are pre-made, and then I made the top portion and painted the figure. This is just a block of pine with holes drilled in it, and then I put this reflective material in front of it. The hands are 3D printed. And this is also, I should be talking about process as well. So this is partly 3D printed, but mostly just a block of wood. This is all hand done. This is all done with Sculpey. And then for this kind of wooden top, this piece is called Together from 2018. Excuse me. And again, like having fun with different materials, is playing using real fabric, and then seeing how well I can sculpt other fabrics, and then that kind of thing. This is It Gets Out, which is basically experimenting near the beginning of this project, playing with foam, seeing what it does. This looks like this weird religious zealot or something. It's a very strange sculpture, but it's very formal, and I like it. It contrasts what's going on in the other room, which is more kind of a wild thing. This is much more tame. So 25%. These are very small for scale. There's a penny. These are about 1.5 inches tall. So these are actually former students that I scanned their feet Again, talking about relationships, talking about proximity, talking about this idea, just with the title being 25%, is like, what is that reference to? The completion of the relationship? Is it, you know, what is it in reference to? It's a question as opposed to making a necessarily a statement. It's a prompt, I should say. This is Wait. This was for the Great Rivers Biannual proposal. So these are for large scale sculptures that would have lights on them and all kinds of stuff. But I wanted to make these small versions so I could photograph them and see them in person. This is a scanned, former student scanned legs. And then everything else is, all this is 3D printed and then hand painted. The legs here are all Sculpey, and then the circle down here is 3D printed with little T lights that you get for decorative purposes glued in there. And some of these have been manifested full scale, and I'll show you those here in just a second. And then on the bottom of the feet here, we have these dirty socks, which these kind of details really get me excited and interested. I actually had someone come to the show and they said, you know, this is all nice and all, but like those socks, like that was the highlight of the show. So that's great. Again, a future project, this one will get manifested. I'm not sure when. These will be, the white and the yellow and the red will all be neon, and it'll be animated neon. So it'll be coming out, it'll be 1, 2, 3, and this kind of repeated kind of plopping out. Talking about neon and lighting and signage, that's a whole different talk, but it's definitely works its way into all these. This figure is all Sculpey, it's all hand done, and again, nerding out with details on shoes and that kind of thing. This figure is about 6 inches tall, and the wallet. Last one for this part is the golden nugget, and this entire thing is 3D printed. It would be in real life, full scale. So in other words, if you're standing on the ground, your head would be right around here, which means that you wouldn't even see the top of this thing. You just see these kind of legs coming off of this giant thing and this kind of blobby golden nugget. And for those of you that have ever been to Las Vegas or know anything about Las Vegas, the Golden Nugget is one of the oldest casinos there, and their first sign was basically a blob of fiberglass with some yellow light bulbs sticking out of it. And I love that idea, like this extremely cheap kind of worthless thing is like representing this extremely valuable thing, which is kind of what's going on here, but not a parallel, but that's got my interest anyway. And then these are two examples of those becoming manifest. So this one's about 9 feet tall. This is the Everything Must Go, same thing in real life. Same thing here. This is the warmth. This one is 4 foot by 8 foot with pink light bulbs and full scale figure components. So going back to the other side. So this is waiting room. And so if the last show, or if the smaller gallery is about projections, it's about what I want you to see, and I'm trying to make these ideas manifest and bring these concepts into life. I feel like waiting room is about reflections, which is more about talking about where I'm at, as opposed to trying to create an idea or manifest an idea in a more strict way. And I can't probably explain that much more clearly in the time that I have. But it's a much more free-form way of working, and a much more acceptance of the conversation that the material and I are going to have. And I really enjoyed that, and that's a new thing for me for this show. So there's 7 full-size figures. When you first walk in, it's an installation. It's meant to be interacted with. I want you to walk into it. So if you see on the floor, there's these marks. All the figures are standing on one, or nearly all of them are, and then there's marks on the floor when you first walk in. The idea being that when you walk in the door, you are literally already in the installation. So you don't have to ask for permission or wonder if you can walk in there. You're already part of it. And it didn't seem to be an issue at all with anyone not being comfortable with walking in it, which was great to see. Kind of taking a quick tour. This was this first figure here. Working around it. The foam I was really excited about as this way of having this form of energy or expression, or another way of saying it would be that if I try to control things or hold things in, they're going to find some way to come out. And that could be joy, that could be anger, that could be any number of things. And so I like this idea of compression or attempted control, and then it just kind of coming out anyway. And so he's here on his phone. And for each model, I asked them just very simple questions like, how do you wait? how do you stand whenever you're in line at the grocery store? What do you do? And his answer was, I pull my phone, and most times I don't even look at it. I just kind of look at what everyone else is doing, and the phone is kind of this prompt to, or this kind of like camouflage where like, oh, I'm gonna look at my phone, but we're like just people watching, that kind of thing. I love this scan, that like the veins and the tendons in his hand really came out really nicely in this scan. And there's these moments of when looking down on the figure, like, okay, I can tell what's going on. And then you just look slightly over and it totally abstracts. Looking into the walnut, it's entirely about design, or these, the meeting of the material as opposed to any kind of representation. So again, the feet are filled with concrete, there's expanding foam. I had these holes in the feet, and just to be playful, I was hoping that the foam would squirt out of it, which it did in these ways. And these are filled with concrete, so then they're not squirting or anything like that. But that's that was the intent there. Moving around this figure, we have again these kind of puffs coming out of the feet here, more holes here and here, and I really enjoy these moments where the foam and the prints are interacting with one another. I've got a few questions about if these are painted or not, and they're not. It just works out that I bought a specific foam and I used a specific filament, and the color is nearly dead on, and so they work really well together. And I love this idea that at one point this was liquid plastic and had no form, and then it became form, and same thing with the foam, is that it's kind of taking that back and becoming formless again. The only print that really messed up that's in the show is mine. None of this is on purpose. Basically, my chin down here, my neck came delaminated from the printer, and it started walking around while it was printing. And so it made these crazy layers, and I couldn't make it do this if I wanted to, but I'm really happy with it. I love it. So you're seeing his little stringy lines. This is all the filament. Every layer is that thick. So you can imagine it takes a few thousand layers for it to actually build up a whole figure. Same thing working with the wood here. There's moments that are really exciting for me where they can be patterns. There can be how to abstract something, how to make it actually have more structure, and how they can kind of come together and intersect and then diverge. This is, some of you may know Mary Jo Lang. This is Mary Jo, and she was the last figure to be built, and I really enjoyed making her as kind of quickly as possible, actually. She was printed upside down, so she has this weird, like, I showed you her scan, and her entire back head was missing, so I had to add these things in here so she could actually be printed. And her cross arms were a challenge, but really like where these things fall apart and become totally abstract. And I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster here. I want to show you these last three. Doing things like eyeglasses, the scanner doesn't know what to do. It can't do reflective surfaces, and it can't do really matte black surfaces. So her glasses actually became part of her face. It's like, well, close enough. And so luckily it did everything else, like, so her rims become part of her cheekbones, and luckily the stems of her glasses actually printed out. I didn't do any cleaning up on these models at all. If there was stuff dangling off or whatever, I just left it all on there. Same thing here. Like I cut out, just to experiment, I cut off the tips of her fingers on the digital model, and so when I squirted foam in there, her fingers started extruding foam out of it. Again, this kind of just playing as we go and seeing what we do, or seeing what happens. This is Tom Lane, and his glasses here came out really well, kind of bumpy, but good. You can tell what's going on there. Tom was suggestive that he wanted this mystery envelope in his hand, so it's in his hand in the show. You can't take it out of his hand; it's in there, but that's what he wanted. The last figure in the show is Arden. So Arden is he's 3 years old, and he's the son of two of the other models in the show. And I really liked him as a symbol for this, talking about waiting and talking about being in this kind of in-between space. He's about 3 feet tall. He doesn't have any foam. His head is kind of crazy because I wasn't able to scan his whole head. This is what it looks like in a really raw state. He doesn't have any foam coming out of him. And if you notice, his body form is very straight as well. And kind of thinking about how these ideas of control or compression that are going on with the other figures aren't happening with him. And not that children are perfect or something like that, but that it's easy to find ways to stop communicating or to hold back or something like that. And again, kids don't have that filter quite yet, which it leads to less compression. And so, but they'll learn for better and worse. So anyway, that's that. And so one thing I wanted to talk about really briefly, I know I'm about out of time, is that Arden doesn't have a mark on the floor for him. All the adults do, and there are these marks for the viewer when you walk in, but he doesn't have one. And I like the idea of two things. One, to get back there to see him, you have to move in between these figures. You have to break that space that we've been taught is a safe space, the 6 foot distancing. And so number one, you already have to do that. And two, we don't know what's going to happen for what's coming in the future. We don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know how this circumstance is going to evolve. And he's 3 years old now. We're in like memorable territory. He's going to have memories of this, and it's going to affect his childhood in a big way. And so the unknown of him looking at the backs of these people that have come before him is what I was really interested in, and that he's he's observing and waiting to see what happens. And so from the outside at night, this looks like I really enjoy the outside shot. It looks like I don't know, post-nuclear mannequin shop or something. So I really like the outside, and that's all I got. So the show is up until October 10th. And you can go to their website, Kathy Gregory, or you can go to my website to see more stuff, or I post a lot of things on Instagram, a lot of process stuff as well. So I will, I suppose, get out of this, and then that's that. So how do I do that? Stop sharing. Okay, cool.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Brian. Do you want to open it up to some questions? I think Tate had a question or two in the chat.
I'm happy to answer questions, yeah.
All right. So it looks like Tate had a few questions. He started with this work, do you feel like your interest is weighted towards metaphor or weighted towards structure and gesture?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, definitely both. No, wait, it's 50-50 because I could easily shift from material and process and form and that kind of thing, and then into the metaphor of how does foam represent where we are, where we're not, and what we're holding back, or what yeah, both. I'm deeply interested in both. Yes.
I mean, I went to the opening and got to see the exhibition, and I guess one of the questions that I sort of had was the overall, and I get told this a lot whenever I do shows. I have people come up and sort of tell me like their responses to just the general vibe of what's being presented, and there were quite a few people that commented on this show feeling a little bit creepy or unsettling. So I'm wondering how you sort of respond to their responses, or was that the intent? Did you want it to sort of have that unsettling nature?
I think the word creepy is probably not the direction I'm interested in.
That's my word, not.
No, sure, no, it's fine. I think what I'm interested in is that I like any art. I like any art that slows me down. Anything that makes me not be able to digest it immediately. Something I can't just be like, oh, I see that, I get it. Okay, I get it. I'm gonna move on. So yeah, I kept getting the response showing people process shots of these things, and as they were coming along, weird was the word that kept coming up. I'm like, weird, and just that works for me. That really works for me. Could they look like disembodied heads or like drippy, ghoulish things, something like that? They could come across that way for sure. And especially as a kid, I would imagine potentially walking in there being freaked out as a kid. But no, I think jarring is probably the word that I value, and that when I was making them, they made me stop and be like, this is crazy. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm really liking it. It's really exciting. And it slowed me down. And so I value that part of it. And so, but I could see all those words playing together well on Playground.
All right, so we've got some more questions in the chat. We've got, do you ever struggle with philosophical questions as to purpose? And what does your art do for you?
Oh boy, those are great and big. The first one, do I ever struggle with philosophical purpose? Wait, is that the
philosophical questions as to purpose. So I'm saying, like, I'm imagining big picture questions as to like your purpose while you're making.
Certainly, yes, absolutely. Yes, so much has to do with philosophy, psychology. What's the point of making anything? I think those are, anyone in a creative field that's manifesting something from nothing or something from something else is asking those basic questions of what is the purpose of this? Why am I doing it? And what is this effort worth it? So my response to that would be the root of it is communication. It does two things. It's for communication and it's for connection. That if I can, in other words, if I have to find a way to say it, then I can find a way to connect with someone else and then maybe learn about what they're doing or what they're thinking about, or vice versa. It starts a conversation, and that's really what I'm looking for. For me, it serves as expression, and it also serves as a reflection, serves as a mirror, and at the same time, it also serves as a prompt and an invitation, and perhaps a prompt for someone else to maybe poke them in the side, or to surprise them, or to compliment something they're already thinking about. Because they're not all that different. I mean, yeah, we all have different backgrounds. We're all slightly chemically different and that kind of thing, but really, we all have the same condition, which is, you know, the human condition. So it's the same and it's not.
Okay. All right, we've got another one. Quint asked, talk about the concept of completion with a room full of maquettes and a room full of partial human forms. How do you know when these are done?
That's a great question. I was just having a conversation yesterday with someone in the gallery, and to that same question, she was asking me, all of these seem really, really finished in a way. Where are you playing with these things? In other words, like they're all kind of polished up. I want to get to his question though. I don't know when they're done. Part of it is time. Part of it is the material. How much literal time do I want to invest in making? But also, there's that point where things get fussy, and I would strive to make something perfect, or as perfect as I can make it, as opposed to making it functional. And I'm more interested in can I get close to the thing that I want, and let it potentially tell me when it's done, which is to say, like, okay, I need to make these wood supports here. I could add one more piece, but that would really just be aesthetic. It wouldn't be, I don't really need it. So it's about how can I make this piece really fit here, where it can act aesthetically and it's functional. And then it's winning and I'm winning, and I can go as well back and add more things later. But I guess painting it's like painting in a very minimal way. Potentially, it's similar. It's being very calculated with your moves. Oh, you're on mute, Emily.
Anybody else still have any questions that they want to speak out loud? Anybody? I'm interested into your response to, was that Christine that made that comment yesterday?
Oh yeah, you may talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious because I sort of, I talked to you throughout the process of you making this, just by nature of like being one of your models. So I got to see it sort of along the way. Mm-hmm. And you kept saying that you really wanted to get loose with it, but then I saw the final product and I was just like, I was like, why does it still look so like tight? And like, and I think potentially it's just it's a mark of like, how good you are as a fabricator, is that like, even when it's loose, it's tight. Like I say that as a compliment.
Yeah.
Not as like a, derogatory. But yeah, I'm wondering, this is some of the more like loose work that I've seen. So I'm interested in how you sort of navigate that back and forth between allowing the materials to sort of do what they want to do, but also maintaining your sense of control within that.
Yeah, I mean, you're touching on a really important intersection for me, and that's a big reason that I went to grad school, because showing you guys the fabrication stuff, being able to make something like a giant perfect football helmet, that kind of thing, is that I learned a ton of skills, learned a ton of process, could make things quickly, high quality, with precision. And I had to go to grad school to help get that out of my system, or at least to reintroduce my gut and instinct, and what I really just wanted to do versus the way it could be done or should be done. So that was a real struggle, and I still have challenges with that. But at the same time, it's not. I don't see it as real. A challenge is the wrong word. Really, all it is I believe we all have different selves in our brain running around. So like the engineering, custom fabrication, super precision builder, Brian, like is really happy when he gets to, use this type of screw or use walnut and think about joinery, that kind of thing. And then artist, more loose Brian, that wants to just cut loose and let it go. It's a matter of giving them equal voice, or playing with their voices and turning one off for a while, but not saying that's bad or I shouldn't do that. So yeah, there's a balance there. And I have, like, the first figure I made was myself, and that was the most stiff. It was the most rigid. It was the most simple. And it took getting into the last one of doing Mary Jo's to just be like, oh, screw it. No, bam, 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 whatever. Let's just see what happens. And it's a process, and it's an unfolding, and it takes time. And to hit the first half of your question, like real quickly, is that the small figures, what Christina and I were talking about, is that the small figure, Christina is the former head of sculpture at Webster. She's my predecessor 2 times back. Anyway, what she was talking about is how the small sculptures are super tight. They're complete sculptures, that kind of thing, even though they're supposed to be sketches. And she's like, how do you just play? And I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. And so that's a challenge for me, because 3D printing is not to play with. Like, if you want speed, if you don't want to be like computer driven, process driven, that kind of thing, this show took me 3 months to do, and like to put together, between scanning everybody, I can't make the printers print faster. I can't skip a lot of these steps. They have to be done. And so, yeah, so part of it for me is slowing down, just letting things slow down. And then at the very end, like to kind of take some of the luster off the show, maybe. None of those figures existed before the Wednesday before the show. So unless they were all built in 4 days. All the parts took 3 months to accumulate, but the actual figures and like the bam, to make them, that was artist Brian getting crazy and having fun. So, yeah.
I do think there is something interesting that did happen in this process, and there, you said there wasn't a lot of play, but I will say you did give up a lot of the control just in the nature of the process of the show. You're working with models that you scan, you're having them choose their pose. You're then, yes, you do the 10 hours worth of computer work to get, woman, be quiet. You do the 10 hours of computer work to get it printable, but then you're sort of like sacrificing or like praying to the 3D printer gods that it'll actually print correctly. And I know there were some like, failures. So maybe it's not like a level of like play that's fun, but you sort of engineered a lot of freedom within the collaboration of your work with the models, your work with a robot that fabricates things for you. Like, there is a lot of playfulness in how you sort of set up this system of making. And so less of a question, more of a comment, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because I connected that, and the basic idea being that if the more control I give away, then that leads to more play that I can have in those kind of in between moments, and I get excited about that. If I try to choke everything and control it and make it be something, then it takes more life out of it than it does really manifest anything. Or manifest something very controlled. And I like not having control. I'm getting used to it and I'm enjoying it more and more.
All right. Do we have any other final questions or comments for Brian? Peanut Gallery? No? All right. Just a reminder, this show is on view at Kathy Gregory Studio Gallery, located in the Shaw neighborhood here in St. Louis until October 10th. If you go to their website, you will be able to find out what the open studio days are and schedule an appointment to where you can go see the show in person, which I would highly recommend.
Sorry, let me cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to hang on here for a little bit on Zoom. So if there's anyone that wants to chat for a moment or something like that afterwards, if everyone hangs up, that's great. I'll be here for a few minutes.
Oh, yeah, great. That's awesome. Yeah, usually, you know, we have a couple of people that end up wanting to talk to some of our speakers. So thank you for creating a space for that.
Sure.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, if you don't want to hang on and then have a little bit of a private chat with Brian, or pseudo private chat with Brian about his work, we will conclude today's lecture. Please remember to join us next week at the same time. We will be sending out the invite for that new lecture via email. We are going to be speaking with Piotr Zyhalski next week. It's one of Noriko's picks. He's an amazing designer, and yeah, it should be a really good discussion. Right? Okay, guys, I'll see you next week. And a reminder, if you're in Art Forum, we have the second reading discussion group that's going to be happening today. We read Jerry Salt's My Life as a Failed Artist. So let's get together. Let's get weird. Let's talk about failure. That's 2 o'clock. I'll see you guys then.
Bye.
Hey. Hey, Eric. How you hanging in there, Eric?
Eric, you're muted. There we go.
In there.
Okay. Good to hear. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. And it's always weird. Well, not weird. It's a new challenge to do this not in person, but yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Emily, for the invite.
Hey, I'm trying.
It's great.
It's a shame that I didn't hit the record button at the right time.
No big deal. No big deal.
Everybody knows who you are anyways.
No, not everyone does.
Not everybody, but most people do.
Yeah. What's up, Eric?
All right. I'm about to head out.
Okay. See you later.
All right.
Thanks for coming.
Jeff, are you still on?
Doesn't look like it.
Doesn't look like it. I think.
There, what's
Hey, I
up?
have a quick question.
Yeah.
And it seems silly to ask everybody. In the foam, did you drill into that, or did you use like liquid nails or something when you attached the like hands and head and everything with the walnut?
Yeah. So
Well, it's not the foam. I mean the 3D print.
yeah. So
Can you drill into that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You can. Okay.
Yeah. So I used a construction adhesive like liquid nails at first, and then I used some mechanical screws to just reinforce it. And then the foam, after because of the forms are hollow, I could then squirt foam into it, and then it would come out, and that also grabbed onto the wood and the print, so making a join between all three.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. That was it. That was my only. I think that was it. You answered everything else.
Oh, okay.
All the other questions, like I just kept getting answered. So very thorough. Thank you. It was fabulous.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
All right.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Oh, Clementine. Anybody else got a question? Or a comment? Talk about the weather? Okay. Oh, are you showing off your art, Dad? You're on mute, Emily.
It's a moose.
It's a moose. You're right. It's a moose.
It's a very nice sculpture we got there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if nobody else has any more comments, Brian, you good?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Mom, Dad, if you want to hang on for a minute, we can talk for a second if you want to. Everyone else can hang up, and we'll
Yeah,
still be on
I'm
here.
going to stop recording and I'll log
Okay,
off and you
good.
guys can just chat.
There we go. Super. Thanks, Emily.